48-hour art check, round 130.
Yeah.
Now I'm all pissed again. I don't know if this is going to be great. It's either going to be really good or really, really bad. It's going to be one of those two types of shows.
Cory's up and angry.
if if I start angry before we even start talking about something that I don't know, I'm not even mad at a specific event. It's just life in general and the way society is set up. Anyway, got Scott here.
Yes.
Welcome back, Scott.
How's it going, guys?
Great. You ready for Creative South?
No. Yeah, sort of, kind of. I'm getting ready. That's kind of partial of what I'm sure we'll talk about as far as challenges and all that stuff. But
yeah. Okay. So let's just jump in then. Josh, what have you gotten done in the last 48 hours?
Nothing much. I have thumbnailed the first or the next page of Quarterly Stories and realized that I'm probably going to be working on the lettering for this for like the next few days.
Oh, okay.
So I thought I'd have like final lettering and panel borders today. And then as I was roughing it out, I was like, oh, it's a bunch of mini movie posters. It's going to take forever.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So, yeah. But I mean, I think that's the nature of thumbnailing. And then the cool thing about personal projects is I don't have some like investor or something who's like, no, you got to cut that. It's just going to be too costly. Like, let's use the easy, simple thing. It's like, nope, I can actually do it the way I want to. So
yeah,
that comes with cost,
right.
Which is time. But yeah.
Yeah, I like that about personal projects too. We've already got people in the chat. We got Pepper and Ronnie. What's up, guys?
Hey, Pepper. Hey, Ronnie. How's it going, guys?
So, Scott, how about you? What have you been up to in the last couple days?
you there?
Yeah. Can you hear me?
All right, hold on. Is that my? I can't hear you guys. What happened?
Oh no.
I don't know. We'll come back to Scott.
Wait, can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you just fine.
Can you
Okay.
hear us?
I can hear you now. For a while, I couldn't hear. For a minute, I couldn't hear you.
Oh, okay.
All right, that was weird. Okay, so let's see, accomplishments. So I, as usual, I put out my 100-day recap video. I finished my pages for the 100 Days of Making Comics anthology. I finished the black and white line art, and I also toned everything, which you won't see that in the video I posted because that was after the fact. So we got like one extra. I guess tomorrow's the next day, so I kind of got ahead and I finished toning that. So there'll be one more video for that like one extra day kind of, but I'll do a whole video on that. But anyway, so I got everything done. I posted it to the website. So my anthology story is turned in. Still got to work on the cover though. I sent out a newsletter today. I wanted to kind of get that out early this month. I usually try to put one out every month, but this one's a little early just because I want to hopefully get some more people on the Kickstarter if possible. I redesigned, you can kind of see scrolling. I redesigned some of these, my retro Ventions prints for t-shirts. And I had those designed before that I was doing for somebody else for their thing, but now I'm just putting them on my website too. So those are all available. Let's see. I uploaded like a punk rock zombie video to Facebook to hopefully get more people into Kickstarter. I did some client work. Let's see, what is it? I can't read my own handwriting here. Oh, just lining. Oh, so yeah, client work, and then I'm trying to get all that stuff out, and then starting to line stuff up for when I get back from Creative South afterwards. And I've been formatting some portfolio pieces for my iPad Pro. I'll have to see if I can get that thing to work. It's still, that thing's kind of foreign to me. I can't figure out how to use a lot of the stuff on it. Let's see. Oh, I weighed myself today and I hit my weight goal, which was I wasn't expecting to hit, that I set a long time ago. And it was kind of a surprise because I kind of cheated a couple days last week, so I don't know how that happened, but I did that, so I was pretty excited about that.
Nice.
Yeah, so I think that's it. I think that's all I got done.
Cool. That's it, huh? Nothing else?
Oh, real quick, is your Kickstarter still running? It's still running, right?
Yes. It ends at midnight tomorrow, I think Pacific time.
All right, so maybe we should
running out.
Yeah, let's mention that. So go to youngandthedead.com and get in on it while you can. There's only about 48 hours left, or sounds like less than that now.
Yeah, less than that.
So like close to 24 hours left. So if you guys are hearing this, go to youngandthedead.com. Hopefully you haven't missed out, and you can support Scott and get some of his comics. Cool. Cory, what'd you get done? Wait, did you? Oh, you haven't done it yet.
So I did this, and I did a video about it. So I think that's it. I can't remember. There's probably some other stuff. But yeah, I was planning on doing some things, and then I changed my mind because I kind of got an image of these guys in my head, and I wanted to kind of do it. So I did those guys, and then I did a time-lapse video where I was ranting, so you can just like turn the sound off and watch the video later if you guys want. And then I've been getting ready for a thing that's been happening every semester, but has recently taken kind of a significant turn. I usually get about 200 people to attend to this event that I put on that I used to call the Sticker Swap. And now I've invited a bunch of other professors to participate, and so we're planning on like 300 to 500 people.
Oh wow!
That's gonna happen tomorrow. It's pretty cool. I'm excited about it. I've done videos on it in the past, but just like a bunch of students like they design stickers and they bring them and they trade them with each other. But this time we've got some money for awards, and so we're giving away like prizes, and there's going to be, anyway, it's building. I'm kind of excited about it, but the main class that I teach is this class 305, which is, it's like a junior level, like deep dive into vector graphics. And, the students have started referring to themselves as they get out of that as 305 survivors, and they have kind of banded together. And so I thought I'd make like a shirt. So I kind of slapped this together in like 15 minutes. So anyway, that's kind of exciting. So some of that will go into like challenges and plans, but that's a lot of what I've been working on is getting ready for that. Because like we used to have like one room, and now we're like spilling over into two kind of large ballrooms, the stage and several projectors. It's becoming a more complicated thing to put on, but it's good. I'm excited it's happening. So
that's awesome.
Yeah. So how about challenges, Scott?
Challenges. Okay, so the kind of my Kickstarter curse continues. It's not too bad. Like, so I had last week I did a live stream with Dave Cumbo, the artist behind the ukulele project that did so well on Kickstarter, and he's got another project called Dreamside that he works on. Amazing artist. But anyway, so we were going to do sort of a collab thing. I did one on my channel, and then today we're going to do one on his. And we could not get the live stream to work. It's some weird thing with Google, or the Hangouts. So we canceled it. But then he called me back and said he thinks he figured it out. So we went a little late, but we did get that out. So I think it's DM Cumbo is YouTube channel. I think there's a link on my Facebook if you follow me on my Facebook page. But anyway, so yeah, we did that. That was a cool conversation. But yeah, just these little things, these little setbacks. Let's see, what is it? Just trying to get everything ready for Creative South. I just had a challenge just right now. So I got this, and maybe Cory can help me after the show. But so I bought this little device for the iPad Pro where I can put an SD card in it. And so I tried to put my portfolio files on there, and they were all PNGs, and they wouldn't work. And I'm like, maybe it only uses JPEG. So I converted everything to JPEG, tried it again. And what's weird is that I had some movie files on there that showed up on the card when I tried to import it, but the JPEGs won't. So I don't know. I got to figure that out, how to get that stuff on there. But just little things like that.
I'll say one thing about the iPad Pro. It is amazing in every way except for getting things onto it and off of it.
That's just an Apple thing. Yeah,
it's just an Apple thing. It is the stupidest. Even like iPad Pro to like an Apple desktop. It's just dumb. Your best bet is to transfer things through Google Drive.
Oh God. Okay.
That's the best thing I've found. There's some programs that you can get that whatever. I don't know why Apple doesn't have a program that just like loads it as a hard drive on your computer, but
it used to work like that with the first kind of iPads and the earlier iPhones. It was much easier, but it's like they made file sharing actually a lot harder.
Yeah,
because you used to be able to just drop like songs into the phone, and it would transfer them. Now it's like you have to go through this whole mess just to get like data transferred. Yeah, it's annoying.
Yeah, it's stupid, and it's because people would sideload hacks like into the device. I don't know. You could try jailbreaking it, then you get all kinds of functionality. But I've never been comfortable doing that.
No, me neither. But yeah, it's just weird because, like I said, the movie, I had some movie files on there and the same SD card, and they came up, but the JPEGs won't. I mean, JPEGs pretty much as universal as you can get.
And PNGs work fine. Like PNGs work fine on the iPad Pro itself. I use PNGs.
Yeah, I would think so.
But getting them onto there is just
So I think I wasted my money on this little device to get the SD card on there.
Yeah.
I'll have to figure that out. Maybe I'll do the Google Drive thing, I guess.
Yeah, it's a dumb way of doing it, but it works.
Yeah.
So, Josh, how about you? Challenges?
So for me, the thumbnail thing was a bit of a challenge because it kind of overshot my estimate in my head. I forgot what point in the story I was at, and so when I started thumbnailing it out, I was like, "Oh, this is going to take a lot longer." So that was one of the challenges. The other like big challenge for me, and I know I've mentioned this multiple times, but it's like as I get further and further towards the finish, I start getting filled with all these thoughts and anticipations of like what's going to come after the finish line instead of just kind of focusing on the finish line.
You know what you should do?
Snoring really loudly. I'm pretty sure you guys might actually do it.
You know what you should do, Josh, is completely abandon this project that you're almost done with and start a new one.
Exactly. I know. Because it's so close to finish. It'd be a really good idea to just abandon the race and start a new 5-year, 6-year project.
You should animate a short film. Get like 99% of the way done with quarterly stories, and then completely switch disciplines.
Oh, I think so. I think that sounds like a plan.
Victor's saying that there's rumors out there that the iOS software update will make it easier to transfer files, which...
Oh, okay. Well, it just asked me to do that, and I said no. So maybe you should.
And hopefully that's the case, because I feel like Apple they're on their way out with professionals. My grandpa, he'll be with them, right? But like if they don't make professional tools do professional things, then they're going to lose everybody. So, so challenges as far as me, I don't know, same random stuff. Like getting ready for Creative South I haven't done it at all. And so that's like a looming challenge in my mind. And I was going to take my motorcycle down, but it's supposed to snow. It snowed yesterday. It's supposed to snow tomorrow, and so I was going to go like tomorrow night after the show, and then I'll have to go like Wednesday morning. And I don't know. I don't mind riding in the rain, but I don't like riding in frozen stuff, even if it's not sticking. So, and it's fine. I've got all the gear that I could do it. But anyway, so there's that. And then my baby hopefully is not sick, but has just, I mean, puked so much, like more liquid than should be physically able to be contained in that size of a human. And it was just like, I don't know. So there's just like a bunch of random stuff like that. Nothing really, just, whatever. I don't know. So yeah, just randomness. And then just getting ready for this thing. This event is, we're just rushing around and running all over campus and getting stuff ready and designing stuff at night for it and all that jazz. So yeah. Josh, did I skip you or did we?
No. We got me covered.
Okay. Okay. Scott, how about plans?
Plans. Okay, so let's see. I think I'm gonna hopefully maybe do a live stream tomorrow on my YouTube channel. Maybe do some more zombie sketches. I have to do some of the color sketch cards for some of the reward tiers. So maybe I'll do some of those live and just kind of drum up some last minute interest in the Kickstarter, because it's at this point it is kind of it is what it is. So it's going to end tomorrow night. So, and then I'm leaving early on Wednesday. Like I got to get up probably at like, I don't know, 4 or something to get to the airport. So yeah, so just all that stuff. So just prepping and everything. Hopefully tomorrow I'll have time to give myself sort of a crash course in Procreate on the iPad, so I can draw on the airplane, because I tried to figure out how to do it. I couldn't figure out how to erase I couldn't figure out how to do a lot of stuff. So
hey, do yourself a favor and try Autodesk Sketchbook.
I have that too, and I was still having the same. I think part of the problem is just I don't know a lot of the actions. Like I saw somebody doing it, they've got like the 3 fingers and the 4 fingers, and they're doing all these different. I'm like, okay, I got to figure all that stuff out. So I gotta just sit down with a video and do it while the video's playing. So hopefully that'll get just enough so I can figure out kind of while I'm there, because otherwise I'm going to have wasted a lot of time on the airplane. That, of course, that might give me a chance to figure it out by myself too. I don't know, but anyway, so yeah, that's that's what I'm doing, trying to wrap all this stuff up and get packed and ready. I sort of got some stuff packed, but I've downloaded like apps and things, like the app for the Eventbrite for like the tickets to the show and the conference and the workshops, and then the airplane app. So hopefully I've got all that ready to go. Plus just printouts and backups and all that stuff. I don't know. I mean, it's been a while since I've traveled, especially my own. So hopefully I'm not forgetting anything.
Yeah. I kind of am in a similar boat. Josh, how about you for plans?
So I'm overdue for editing some episodes of our podcast. So I'm going to try to edit like 2 tonight after this is done recording. And then I hope to kind of have the lettering started, but I'm going to be a little more realistic with my goal. So I'm thinking this page is going to take a while on the lettering, but it's going to be well worth it. So
yeah, that'll be
rather take my time and get it right than take my time and get it, or rush it and get it wrong,
Yeah. So. Yeah, which is like you mentioned, one of the cool things about personal projects.
Mm-hmm.
So,
what about you? What are your plans, Cory?
A big plan for me is I am missing the last week of the semester, which is normally a huge grading week. So I'm trying to get my grading done before I leave. And so that'll be huge. And then I'm also, let me see if I can show this. That's not coming up as much as I would like. Anyway, there's a thing that I've been wanting to do for a long time where you can take a face and separate the elements of the face in Z space, and then you get like a 2.5D parallax on like head movement, as long as you don't move like into a profile. So you can kind of move from like 3/4 right to front to 3/4 left. And I think one of these characters that I've designed is designed in a way that I could do that. So I'll probably play with that. That doesn't make a lot of sense, but basically you get some like head bobbing and things like that. So I might do some super limited movement on that illustration just to kind of play with that functionality. I saw somebody do it, and I've mocked it up in sketches before and made it work, but I've never done it on like a finished illustration.
Huh.
So, and I wish I would have thought of that when I was making it, because now I'm gonna have to break it all up into pieces instead of like designing it in layers. But yeah, whatever. It was just like a Sunday afternoon sketch that I turned into a final illustration. So
nice. That sounds cool though.
yeah.
Anytime you talk After Effects, it just sounds fascinating and fun.
Yeah.
All right.
It can be pretty cool. So, okay.
So for the topic, did we want to continue the whole thing about regrets, or do we want to dip into this thing you're all fired up about, Cory?
We do a little both. I kind of want to hear more about what Cory has to say.
I want Cory to go off. I think it's interesting.
All right.
Yeah, he was pretty charged up.
I can go off, and I'm sure Scott, you've got a lot to say about this, because like a lot of how I feel about it has been kind of watching your Kickstarter. It's just I hate the term that it's not fair, like, because that's a stupid term to say, but like the way everything is set up is just stupid. Anyway, let me jump into this. So if for whatever reason you guys enjoy kind of more of the high energy ranting, that's probably going to happen. So share this video and whatnot. All right. Today's topic is, I don't know what to call this topic, but I'm pissed off about the algorithm that seems to be stacked against all the small time creators. I don't know. I don't know how to encompass that in a topic, but let me kind of run through some of this. And if you've seen my most recent video, you got like kind of a taste, but sometimes I'll make a video to get things out of my system. And instead of getting it out of my system, I started thinking about things a lot more. And I'm more angry about it than I was before. So here's the situation, right? Prior to the situation that we have right now, you had gatekeepers, right? And those gatekeepers were like the big media conglomerates, Oprah, Walter Cronkite, whoever, right? And if you were chosen from the crowd, then you could rise above everybody. But there was really nothing that you could do to be chosen. It was kind of random, or whatever. Then the internet came along, and the Web 1.0 was super basic. It was just a different delivery mechanism. Web 2.0, which is a super old term now, because this is happening like in the kind of early 2000s, was user-generated content began driving the internet. And user-generated content was super interesting, because instead of content providers like TV networks and things like that delivering content, and you really had no choice in the matter, what happened is that the world creators, whether they had been passed by the gatekeepers or not, were able to make stuff. And so the internet fractured fandoms, right? It fractured things into tiny little niches like all over the world. And whatever you were into, there's a community for you in there. Now, here's some things that have been happening since then. Oh, and because of that, people who had no right by the previous standards of kind of the Mad Men era of things to get big and get popular and become powerful in their own right with their own creations. That happened, right? It even happened in comics, where you had the two giants, kind of lumbering around and regurgitating the same old stories of the same 40 characters, and then Image came around and kind of shook things up, and then now you've got Boom and Dark Horse and Top Shelf and all. I mean, everything kind of just fractured, right, to where there's some room, and here's what's been going on. So since then, two main things have happened to kind of cause this, and every time somebody makes an announcement like this, you hear all of this excitement about it, and it kind of makes me feel like nobody understands what's going on. I know that's not true because a lot of people do, but Disney owns like most of my childhood now, and they continue to buy up things, right? Telecoms continue to buy up telecoms. But I mean, the fact that you can have the X-Men and any Disney movie and, like anything that Fox has ever produced, and Pixar, all in the same universe, owned by the same company, in addition to one of the 3 major networks, in addition to owning, a bunch of stuff that nobody ever thinks about because they don't have like Deadpool or Wolverine attached to it. It's like really weird and interesting things like that. Tied into the delivery mechanism of the internet itself, which is tied into the FCC, and the recent change in the FCC where now giant telecoms are basically going to be allowed to, do all kinds of weird things to the information that's getting to our home. The era of free flow of information of Web 2.0 seems to be dying and being replaced by gatekeepers again. And the gatekeepers are even more frustrating than they were before because the gatekeepers are now robotic and stupid. And so to take kind of this free flow of information where it was really awesome and there was really no one to get in your way of doing really cool things, and change that. And here's the life cycle of a social media network now. This is really frustrating. You have a social media network and it's cluttered and it's garbage and there's flaming guitar spinning pixelated GIFs with, your name flashing in glitter and every, video cam chick on the internet trying to get you to pay for their service, and you can't even contact anybody anymore. And then there's a new service that comes out that's clean and it has nice typography and there's nothing on it except for the stuff that you put on there and that your friends put on there, and everybody jumps to that one. And then it slowly degrades and turns into the thing that it killed. By mutating a company. And here's how that works is it normally is a, what you see is what you get, non-algorithmic timeline where if I choose to follow Scott, if I choose to follow Josh, then every time Scott or Josh puts something on that social media network, then I get to see it. There's no barrier to entry. There's no one deciding whether it's worthy of what I want to see or whatever. And if I want to stop seeing it, I can unsubscribe, I can unlike, I can unfriend, or whatever terminology. But at some point in time, either when these companies go public or when they have to start turning a profit, they begin trying to figure out how to jam advertisements in there. And they start doing that, and it becomes a problem in 2 ways. One problem is that it's cluttering the free flow of information because of something called native advertising. And native advertising is problematic because there used to be standards, journalistic integrity, where you would have the content, the things that people were producing was separate and distinct from the advertising, the things that paid for those things. And what has happened is because people were trained to ignore the advertising, our brains literally don't look at certain parts of the screen when we're on the internet because we know that that's the place where ads go. They started to do native advertising, and the definition of native advertising, no matter what everybody says, because they'll tell you it's just like it's advertising with a story or whatever. That's bull crap. What native advertising is, it is a Trojan horse. It is advertising that is intended to look like the content where the ad is placed, so that it's indistinguishable or almost indistinguishable within a legal margin from the actual content itself. And so what you get is you get people sneaking ads into that content. That's the first thing that's problematic. And because of that, it muddies the waters and people are not sure what is real and what is paid for. And then that opens up a thing for what is real, what is paid for, and what is some foreign entity trying to manipulate a population of people. Then the second thing that happens is that those timelines where I subscribe to person A, whenever person A puts something up, I get to see it, become algorithmic. They try to deliver, quote, the most relevant or the best content to you. And so they give you an algorithmically filtered content. And this does two things. One, it makes the tiny little creators, it encourages them to pay to boost their content to get to their own audience. And if you think about that, that is ridiculous, right? The fact that I might have 20 people that want to see my stuff, but only 2 of them get to see my stuff unless I pay $5, and then the rest of them might be able to see it if it's worth it. That shouldn't be the choice of the algorithm. The other thing that it does is, if you are big, if you happen to strike gold by jumping on a platform at the right time or going viral at the right time, then you're fine because you're already big. So the algorithm loves you. But if you're trying to grow at this point in time, it's a super uphill battle because the algorithm is seeing that your stuff isn't performing as well as it should. And so then you can do one of two things. You can spend the next eternity trying to figure out how to grow your audience organically, right? Which they are against because they want your money. And so everything is stacked against organic growth. Whereas organic growth used to be very possible, now all of the algorithms are trying to punish anyone who's doing organic growth. Then beyond that, if you try to pay for stuff because of the dark hat stuff that's going on, you've got people that are out there that have like fake accounts or empty accounts. And this is kind of what my video was about before. I'm going to stop talking any moment now so that you guys can jump in. But the fake accounts are like this, right? You have click farms, you've got like farms, you've got basically factories full of people in specific countries around the world and in the Midwest in the US, where people will sit there and they will like pages, right? And this means that you get followed by these people on Instagram. It's like, if you want 800 likes today, or if you want 2,000 followers today, just give us $50 and blah 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 blah. And here's the problem with that. The problem with that is not real engagement, because I'm not interested in having 40,000 follows on Instagram. I'm interested in having real relationships with real people who are really interested in what I have to say. And I'm interested in having relationships with other artists because of what they have to say, because there's real human connection there. As soon as you get into the numbers game, because that's the easy thing to measure, then it introduces these kind of like farms and click farms. Now, the algorithms don't want those like farms and click farms to be able to work, because again, if everybody says, well, it's not real engagement, then they're not delivering the product, right? And here's we'll get into the product in a minute. But so what the click farms and all those farms do is they like legitimate advertising, and they engage with legitimate advertising to trick the algorithms into thinking that they're real things. But the problem is they're not, because they can follow your page, they can like the thing that you've promoted and all that stuff, but it's not a person who is engaging with your stuff. So they're not going to comment later. They're not going to buy your book when it goes on Kickstarter. They're not going to engage on a human level, because they're not people. It's either robots or it's people who are paid to run these 20 accounts and X amount of things per day. So the problem is if you do it the right way, quote unquote, the right way, and you're supposed to advertise, which is the whole point of how they've done this algorithmic timeline, then you start getting in quote unquote engagement from empty accounts, which is fake engagement. Then comes the problem where after that, if your account becomes bloated with empty accounts who don't engage with your content, then when you put new content out, then that content is not being engaged by your audience on a percentage basis, right? So if I had 10 people who were super excited about my stuff before, and that's the only thing I had, people would look at it and go, you don't have much of an audience. But if like 7 of those people engage with my content every time, that's 70% of my audience that's super engaged. But if all of a sudden I blow up and I have 20,000 empty accounts and 200 people that are willing to actually be people and follow, then my engagement rate, even though I might have 10 times more the actual amount of human beings that are engaging with my stuff, it's a fraction of what it was before, because before it was 70 with just a few people, and now it might be, a percent or two of that. And so when I push something out, the algorithm will say this person is not creating relevant content, and so it won't allow me to see and reach the actual people who have made that decision to be reached. So my problem is that the algorithms have become that which they sought to replace, and they are causing the systems One, there's a complete lack of trust from the people that are trying to create things, because it just seems like you're who's the guy? Sisyphus? Who's the guy who's just pushing the rock up the hill for eternity, and the ravens come and eat his liver every day? Sisyphus, right? It feels like that a lot of the time, right? Where you're not getting anywhere. It's a ton of effort with very little movement, and it's just, that's what every day is like. The other option is that I can pay money, but then I pay money and I get punished because the numbers that I don't care about go up, and the amount of engagement goes down. So my reach to actual people is hindered and hobbled. That's kind of what I'm upset about. And so we're entering an age where we are leaving paradise, where creators could create something and reach whoever was interested, and there was no barrier in between the creator and their audience. And we are leaving that to make sure that the corporations and the algorithms and the robots are satiated because of the way everything is set up. The delivery mechanism is more important financially than the content that everybody actually cares about. The audience cares about the content. The producers of the content, the creators care about the content. The middleman cares about the delivery mechanism. And because they control the delivery mechanism, they just muck everything up. Everything is screwed up, and it's only going to get worse. And I don't know what the solution is, but I'm pissed about it.
You know, I kind of broaden this a little bit from just algorithms online, because I feel like what you're complaining about actually could translate very well to comics. Indies, like, for years have had the issue of like the middleman in comics is anti-indie. And so because the middleman is like this glorified entity in the comic industry, and it's literally your only pathway to get into small stores that don't really sell like a massive amount of books, you're pretty much screwed if you're just trying to put out your own content and get mass distribution. And there's not a lot of, like, I mean, there have been attempts, but there haven't been really effective indie distribution sites set up for cartoonists. And so what's interesting is the exact arc you're describing could apply to indie comics, where it's like in the early 2000s, there was this weird thing that was happening where you had like Top Shelf like booming. Like they had like a New York Times bestseller, and then you had like Fun Home get put out by like Random House, and you had like Jimmy Corrigan, Smartest Kid on Earth, and like Mouse was finally getting the credit it should be getting, and all of these great like indies were just starting to break through. And so all of the publishers were like freaking out about independent content. And this is about the era I moved with my wife to Portland. And it was interesting being in the thick of it, because all of these indie cartoonists really had this legitimate hope that they would actually be able to make a living doing like indie, like autobio comics, like slice of life comics. Like one of my friends in Portland was working on like a biography of like a explorer who like discovered all these different lands, and he was actually like going on ships and like researching this whole like sea voyage, and then like documenting it in a graphic novel. And the reason he was investing in doing that was like he had a real hope that, like, because at the time, like, people were just getting scooped up by major publishers with decent advances too. Like, people were getting advances for graphic novels, and it just seemed like, wow, this is the change. And then what ended up happening, weirdly enough, is like when the superhero movies all started booming, and like the MCU and stuff like picked up, the reverse happened to kind of indie comics. So what's weird is like suddenly they were like, oh, okay, we actually don't want to do anything in comics that's not like capes and tights. And so it just kind of became more of the same. And so we're in another scenario with comics where you have occasional indies, but like if you look at like what sells well for Image Comics is a perfect example. They're always brought up as this like clout and like this perfect example of indie comic publisher. But show me one, Image comic that doesn't have like action, guns, girls, or like capes and tights. like, or like sci-fi. It's like it's the same kind of content that was selling in the 80s, just like a little more variety in it, and definitely some cool stories. I like them, but it's like back to that kind of monotone story. And so it felt like this whole thing was cracking open. Like comics were in bookstores, like they're going to be respected as literature. It's going to be like the bookstore where you go and you've got like fiction and you've got nonfiction and you've got like westerns and you've got like romance and you've got all this variety. And it's actually become more homogenized again, to where like what's weird is, you know, like outsiders were like writing, like Fun Home is one of the most outsider books you can imagine. And yet like everybody's raging about Captain Marvel being this embracing story of like feminism. And it's like, but what about like Alison Bechdel like coming out and being openly a lesbian in a story that was like a just tell-all, where it's like it humanizes like people on the outskirts. And like there were all sorts of books like in the early 2000s like that were happening, and those books have actually gotten like quashed by stuff like Captain Marvel, and which is crazy, because I have a split personality about it, because I love that stuff. Like I grew up with stuff. I love I actually really enjoy all the MCU stuff. I love Spider-Man. Like that's one of the books I grew up with. But what's weird is it is becoming more of like, when the gates were kind of cracking open, suddenly the gates came back. And so now like the only interest people have is like in doing all ages comics that are for kids, which is weird because comics fought for years to try to get out of that chokehold. Like they actually felt like restrained by that. They were like, we're not just for kids. Like that's what Watchmen made such a big impact, because it like came out and was like, this can be for more than kids. And I do think it went like way too far away from kids, and it's good that there are comics for kids. But it's fascinating that comics have gone back into the constraints that like Will Eisner was really trying to break out of. He called it the comics ghetto. And like even what he was doing with the Spirit, like he was trying to move away from that and like move into more kind of like artsy stories and stuff. But he just felt this resistance of comics being stuck in this like loophole of like the same 4 stories over and over again. And honestly, I feel that frustration all the time, because I'm doing autobio comics that aren't going to hit like a certain niche. And whereas like if this were the early 2000s, I would probably think like, you know, in a year I'm going to have like a massive publishing deal. I'm going to get an advance. It's going to be out in bookstores. Now it's like, because it's gone back to like the same distribution networks, the same 4 publishers, most of the indies that are out there are really struggling or scraping by. Kickstarter is a blessing and a curse. Like you have more variety in what's out there, but on the downside with Kickstarter, it gives a lot of indies an excuse to not take risks and put out books, because they're like, oh, you can just run a Kickstarter, you know, and put out your own book. But it doesn't solve that distribution problem. And that distribution model is like, it's been a problem with rock and roll. It's been a problem with everything. And it is sad that the internet's gotten there too, because I do remember, like I've talked about it before, but like my experience with Threadless was like that, where when I first got on Threadless, it was a system where if you did a design that was an effective, good design that would sell, it would get printed. Like, and it was just literally that, because you had just this direct window to your audience. And most of the people voting for it were the people watching. And most people designing were fans, and they would buy it and stuff like that. But then it broke open because people gamed the system. They had to change their forum and their voting system and all of that, because a couple kind of people took advantage of it. And then it became like what it is today, which is okay and it's effective, but it's not to the scale that like it was at like in the early 2000s, because of the fact that it's run by algorithms and stuff. So it's like you kind of have to game it if you're going to do it, and yet you kind of can't game it. So it's, I don't know, it is a weird, it's a fascinating thing, but it's weird because to me it's interesting because all the things you're kind of complaining about with like the advertising and the pandering to advertising and kind of basing success on previous successes and not taking risks and stuff like that. Like that actually really, to me, translates a lot to comics,
Well, and it's an interesting thing that has been. It seems like it's just a human condition. It's just part of what we do. Because I remember I was never successful on Threadless, but Threadless is the reason that I know Adobe Illustrator at all. Because right after I graduated college, I saw Threadless, and Threadless was like the lawless Wild West. I mean, it was just whoever had was the quickest draw out there, and it was amazing because it was like this utopia of creativity, where it was like this small window of a meritocracy, and what seems to happen every single time. Where that happens, whether you're talking about Web 2.0, whether you're talking about Threadless specifically, or whether you're talking about the Spartans in the 5th century, what seems to happen is that there are people that try to figure out, instead of like, I'm going to get good and produce decent content, is they say, hey, the people that are good and producing decent content seem to all have this one little loophole in common that I can exploit. They begin exploiting that loophole, and then the people who are like, well, I want to keep this to be kind of like, just creation. That's what I want to keep it about. And so these people trying to game the system, like, we got to close that loophole. But then eventually you close so many loopholes that you stop viewing your community as creative, and you start viewing your community as aggressive, and then it becomes kind of an us versus them situation. And it's like, well, if these guys aren't going to support it, I'm just going to close down everything. And these advertisers are willing to give me some money. And it's an interesting thing. We've got some good comments in the chat. Let's see, where was that one? It's basically, who said it? It's the chat's going too fast for me to follow it, but somebody said it's all about the almighty dollar. And this is a really interesting thing about it that I find fascinating, is because we have decided, I'm gonna sound like an anarchist. I'm actually not, but I'm gonna sound like it. We have decided as a community of people, okay, as a group of human beings, to value this thing that has no intrinsic value in and of itself, right? The real value is in the value that we create, right? If I take a piece of paper, the inherent value of that piece of paper is pennies. It's nothing. The material value of that thing is nothing. But if I spend 20 hours on a drawing, all of a sudden the value of that goes up to hundreds of dollars, or even thousands of dollars. And so I've created value from nothing. I've created value from effort, right? The difficult part about that is it's really, really hard to take that value and transfer it into goods and services. So the middleman becomes this currency exchange, where it used to be, like, well, I'll trade you a chicken for, some labor, right? And I'll trade you 5 chickens for a cow, or whatever. But then it became difficult, because it's like, well, how much, is skilled labor work worth? How many chickens is a horseshoe, from a blacksmith worth? And so then the introduction of currency and debt comes into play. But that is, if we look at it anything other than what it is an agreement that we will all buy into the illusion that there's value in that stuff. And because we have decided that that's true, it actually is true. The economy does well when people feel like it's doing well. The economy does poorly when people feel like it's doing poorly, because if the illusion starts to crack, then the reality starts to crack. And the whole thing with this drives me crazy, because then you have currency in the middle, and then beyond currency you have debt, and then beyond debt you start to have middlemen who pop up that are willing to pass that stuff around and distribute that stuff, when really, if there's a guy that wants to read my children's book, I want to get that to that guy, right? If there's a gal that wants to read my comic, I want to get that to that gal, right? Yeah. And the more people in between me and her, the more people in between, the stuff that I want to consume and the people creating that, the less that the people who are actually creating the value get. And the more that the machine, the mechanism, the middlemen get, and it drives me crazy. But here's what I think, as we've been thinking about this, because I started to think, there was this window of opportunity where, for like 10 to 12 years, everything was great, and it's never going to be like that again. Yeah. There's actually been times like this cyclically throughout history. And so I think, because I remember having a good conversation. There's a guy that teaches social media on campus with me, and we were talking, and he was saying that like there used to be this thing with with the algorithms where it was like, it's how much it does in the first hour, it's how much it does, right? And that's all very true. It's becoming more outdated. But a lot of those people are starting to say it's the quality of the content you're producing. And that age-old adage that content is king, that phrase has been around for a long time, since movable type. And because as soon as I can move little letters around and produce any book that I want, the production of books that used to be handwritten, right, or fixed into plates and super expensive became relatively inexpensive. And then all of a sudden people said, well, just because it's a book doesn't mean it's a valuable book. And so then the content became important. That is starting to swing back around. I'm getting a little encouraged in that I believe that if we continue to produce stuff of value and don't become part of the bandwagon crowd that tries to game the system, that eventually those gates are going to swing back open. There'll be another period of hopefully a decade or more where there's going to be another boom of creativity. And then there'll be people that try to game the system. There'll be people that close those loopholes, and there'll be all the money grubbers and bean counters in between that get in the way and muck everything up. And then again, those gates will swing open one more time. So now that I'm thinking about it, this has been happening for centuries. If you think about the history of debt and the history of money, it goes back thousands and thousands of years, because that's what society is based on, is the mutually agreed upon exchange of obligation, whether you call that obligation favors or barter or cash or IOUs. All of our society is based on the fact that if we stop buying into that illusion, that our societal contract completely breaks down and anarchy happens.
Yeah. I think I wanted to address like another thing in the chat. Like Pepper mentioned, he does kids books because he likes to tell kids stories. Having a 7, 8, or 10-year-old come up to me and ask a ton of questions about artwork is the best feeling. And I do want to really I know I was kind of railing against kids comics. I don't think kids comics are bad. I think there's a lot out there that aren't good, but I think that's in general with most books or most comics or most movies. There's a lot of stuff out there that may not maybe be the best choice to have out there. But I'd say in general, like some of my favorite comics of all time are children's comics. I mean, Calvin and Hobbes, I think, is some of the best cartooning ever done. I'd say Bone by Jeff Smith is like a masterpiece that could stand next to like the best comics of all time. So I definitely want to be clear. Like, I'm not against kids comics. I'm more just kind of amazed at how the market kind of shifts and always wants to find like a niche, like a certain niches that they want to kind of highlight and get out there. Tacking on to what Cory was saying, though, I think one of the things that gives me hope is just punk rock. Here's the thing, distributors have always been a nightmare for artists. And I mean, this goes back to like the Medici family in Italy, like being really selective about which show. But what's weird is there's always been outliers that just manage to kind of like, they don't go through the door, they just break through the wall. And I think like hip hop's a really good example of that. Like initially, like most hip hop was like sold out of the back of trunks, like of cars, and just made on mixtapes that were passed around and sold for like 50 cents and totally made in their own way. And similarly, like punk rock was just like pressed on wax records because it was just super cheap to do. And then, they'd, do a small run of like 45s when, they could get really good deals from these factories that were running, like still had the equipment to run 45s, but had no clients. and they took advantage of it and got like cheap, product made, and then like mostly distributed it at shows or through like their own little catalogs that they passed out at shows. And you'd have to like send away a quarter to like these different record companies that, so like to me, like what's inspiring to me is like look into like Discord Records and like how Ian McKay like kind of started this like his own record label and kind of refused to get in that whole like crazy distribution system. They just found a different pathway and, you know, did it their own way and did it really well. And there's a lot of like cartoonists and kids book artists, and there's a lot of good content that does somehow break through. So to me, like I won't give up hope as long as there's good content, even good content that goes through the crazy system.
Yeah.
So I feel like as long as there's outliers, I do think something worth considering, and this is something I'm going to think about with my book. I've talked about it too. And then I want to get Scott on because like poor Scott's just been
no, this is all interesting stuff.
But I think like alternate approaches, like, so right now, like most people are going to tell you like, this is how you game social media. This is how you succeed as an artist. This is how you sell your comics. This is where you sell your comics. You do a comic convention that you have to pay tons of money for a table for, and you're competing against those big conglomerates who are going to make way better sales than you.
Worse than that, you're competing with the actor that plays the Flash on the CW TV show.
Exactly. And you might very well be the guy who created the Flash, and you're having to compete against the actor who's going to get a much bigger line. And that's kind of, that's the game they want you to play. But what's interesting is like, you know, there's a whole bunch of different routes to it. Like you don't have to necessarily do comic book stores. You could do bookstores. You could do like coffee shops. You could do gigs, like set up a show, like go to a bar and like, you know, book a comic night where it's like a reading for like you and your friends who make comics. Like, you don't necessarily have to sell through the same channels. And I do think like thinking outside of the box is like a really good avenue, because once again, like, and also being current and stuff with what is there, because if that window opens, you want to be jumping through before it closes again, you know? But until then, I mean, I always have this just method of like, just punch a wall until it breaks. Like if you can't get through the door, the back door is closed, like all the, like everything inside is cool and awesome and you want in, like make your way in. Like if you have to, like start drilling a hole through the wall. I mean, it you know, you kind of have to think outside of like the entry points that all the middlemen and all the gatekeepers want you to take. Like the neat thing about gatekeepers is usually there's a side route where you don't have to cross the troll bridge. You can just go around the trolls. Like, you know, you don't have to play the stupid riddle game. There's beautiful.
And then to kind of carry on with that analogy, like there are these times, and it continues to happen, where somebody will see, you know, I've tried to drill through the wall, I've tried to come through the roof, I've tried to tunnel in through the floor, and just screw it, I'm just going to build my own. And so they go down the road and they build their own, and it is awesome and it's free, and you know, there's no walls to it, and everybody comes and hangs out there. And then people start to try to like steal stuff from people, so they build a few walls, and then they become the thing that they built that against. And you see that happen with Patreon and Kickstarter and Indiegogo and Gumroad and whatever, you know, and Twitter and Facebook and all this stuff. It originally became, I mean, if you think about what Twitter is a fascinating thing. It's actually a term called microblogging, because people were saying like, hey, these blogs are great, but what if we all just got together and decided to microblog? And then now that's becoming where they're like, well, we got to figure out a way to monetize this thing. But it all happens because, like, if I say, you know what, I don't like what's going on with X crowdfunding thing, you know, whether it be Patreon, Indiegogo, or whatever, I could be like, I'm going to start my own thing, right? And so I start my own thing. If I get enough people to show up, it can be really awesome for a short period of time. And then it just seems to be inevitably to the point where it's just going to be like, yeah, it's just going to be crap. And that's the thing with like shows. Like shows should be the perfect thing. It's the people who want your stuff, and you talk face to face with them, and you have the stuff that they want. And then it always seems to trend towards garbage. It always seems to, not garbage, but it always seems to trend towards noise. This just reminds me of like the signal to noise ratio, right? 5x5 is something that Faith on Buffy used to say all the time. It's an old World War I, World War II terminology where it's talking about the strength of the signal versus the amount of noise in the air, right? And so if you're 5x5, it means there's no noise and you've got a super strong signal, you're coming in clear. You want to be 5x5 with your audience. That might mean that you clear a channel or whatever, right? But you can be 1x5 and have a really weak signal, but with no noise, and it comes through. And that's how all of us start, right? Is we're like, well, I don't have a very strong signal. This is where the term signal boost comes from. It's like, like bigger people with a bigger antenna or whatever, they'll be like, hey, I'll carry your pirate radio for you. So it'd give you a little bit of a signal boost. That's become a thing where people with influence on social media have like retweeted people or whatever. Hey, thanks for the signal boost. That's where that is. But as soon as there becomes more noise, the noise starts to increase. If you don't have the ability to increase the power of your signal, then you just get drowned out by the dross, by all the other signals that are out there. They can be good, bad, ugly, or whatever. It doesn't matter. But the fact of the matter is, the noisier and crowded that something gets, the weaker everybody's position is. And so that's why there's this continual, it's like the law of entropy applied to content. It used to be that there were 3 networks, and those 3 networks were 100% of the television. And you could get tens of millions of people watching one of those shows because that was the only option that they had, right? And then cable TV came along, and then streaming came along. And now you're happy if you've got tens of thousands of people doing it instead of tens of millions or whatever. And it continues to fracture because it continues to niche down. But the problem is that I see is that if the big companies don't wise up, they're too slow to pivot and too slow to turn. They will be toppled and destroyed by the people that come along and they're like, hey, your thing sucks. I'm going to build my own thing. And they build their own thing. But more and more, it seems like governments, societies, systems, and ingrained things. I mean, how we don't just wake up every morning and think, like the oligarchy are the robber barons of the industrial age. I don't know how we're just not like, I just threw a bunch of terms out there, but that makes sense to me. Anyway, how that doesn't just piss everyone off every day that you wake up is beyond me, except for we're all really entertained by all the stuff happening. I love the fact that, like Luke Skywalker and Wolverine could potentially have a fight, and you could see whether or not adamantium can cut through or be blocked by a lightsaber. Like, that is possible now, and nobody seems to care that 4,000 people are out of a job because of that.
Yeah. What's interesting, Squatchy was mentioning another like side route, which is like starting an engagement group where we all go like, comment, and share members' posts to get stuff seen more because the algorithms want engagement. It's another possibility. Like, there's a million ways to do it, but one thing I will say is like, just having been like a nerd and an outsider like most of my life, there's this beautiful thing that happens when you find the subculture.
Yeah.
And you're just like, oh yeah, there's other people who don't like this crappy music that everybody seems to like, or there's like this weird group of people who like don't necessarily think like those jeans that are the popular jeans are like the best thing to wear. Like, there's, it's kind of like a matter of like, I think in a weird way, I know we speak against tribes sometimes for like tribal thinking and stuff, but sometimes it's good to find your tribe to be able to combat stuff like that. Because with the little group, you can do a lot of damage. And so like, that's kind of like that's my hope in the whole thing.
Okay, I've got a rant on subcultures. You ready for this? This is subcultures are one of my favorite things to talk about, because if it weren't for the rebels, then people of certain skin tones wouldn't be allowed to vote or own property and would actually be property today. Like, if you look at society has only gotten better because groups of people have decided that are on the fringe and that have crazy ideas, like maybe black people are just as a person as I am. Like, that's an insane concept that somebody had one day. And you want to look at something super interesting. Go back and read about Abraham Lincoln. He never aligned himself with the abolitionists because the abolitionists were seen as radical extremists. The people that thought that slavery should be ended were seen as so extreme that you couldn't deal with them, right? He was an abolitionist at heart. right? But he could never publicly align with the abolitionists because if he did that, it was just too nuts. It was too crazy. And if you look at this, you look at it in music, right? Everybody's going with classical music, right? Yeah. Hitler's all about the classical music. And then all these people are like, hey, you know that Hitler-Jugend youth group that you've got where you make everybody like go camping and then learn to hate the Jews and stuff? I don't really like that. You guys cut your hair short, I'm going to wear it long. You guys listen to classical music, I'm going to listen to big band and swing, right? And there's this rebellion that happens, and then jazz, and then hip hop, and then disco, and then, you know, everything is a reaction to everything else. But everything has happened because a group of people have gotten together and said, hey, this thing that you guys are all doing that everybody seems to accept as a given, that sucks. I hate it. I'm gonna do something different than that. You know, like the suffragettes and all that. I mean, you have like Gandhi and Martin Luther King. I mean, look at every single one of these groups that has affected major and positive change. It's happened because groups of people have gotten together and rebelled against the existing system. And without that revolution, without that rebellion, okay, it used to be, if you go back not very long ago, right? A couple hundred years ago, and I'm not exaggerating, a couple hundred years ago, you would wake up, half your village would be taken into slavery and killed, and everything would be on fire, and you would say, well, it was dark, because that's how humanity was until like the Sophates came along, and they're like, hey, you know how everybody's walking around dressing like a hoplite soldier because that's the easiest way to fight in battle? What if I did the exact opposite of that? I'm going to wear this giant flowing robe. I'm just going to put a toga on and walk around and question things. And people are like, don't question things. That's weird. You're either going to give birth or you're going to kill things. That's what we do in the society. It's like, you know what? No, I'm just going to think about stuff and I'm going to talk about it. That's what I'm going to do. That was a revolution. Like we think about the Greeks and the Romans, they weren't always like that. I mean, the Spartans were what they were really like. And then again and again and again, over and over and over again, somebody comes along and says, I don't really like the way that everyone is doing this, and I'm going to do something different. So I am all about, and Abe says Footloose and Kevin Bacon subculture. I'm all about that, right? No, so I literally today I will start a Slack group or a Discord or something. I'm going to do a little research on what the best one is, and we're going to start our own little rebellion, and we are just going to take down the algorithms because I don't freaking care anymore. I am so sick of it that we're just going to have a little chat. There'll be some rules so that nobody tries to game the system, and I'm just going to boot anybody who is a bad actor, and everybody who wants to chill and share good stuff, we're totally doing that. We're starting it today. It's definitely going to happen. So the next time I go live on the air, I will have a solution to this. We are going to have a group where you make something, you share it, and people go and comment and like on it, because I am so sick of the gatekeepers and the algorithms that the gate is going to swing the other day because I'm going to rip it off the frickin' hinges.
Yeah, and just to chime in on that, like maybe this could be like a little subline in our group, but all of this talk is reminding me, I've quoted this before, but in Almost Famous, there's this scene where Lester Bangs says to the main character, the only true currency in this bankrupt world is what you share with someone else when you're uncool. And like, I actually think, I think there's something to be said for that. Like the like being an artist, you're naturally going to be kind of an outsider, and you're always going to be fighting against the kitsch crap in the mall, you know, like that's always the fight of the artist. And it has been forever. Like there's certain trends that like would hit art when the Impressionists were starting to do Impressionism. And like, everybody was like, no, this whole thing is insane. Like, that's not what you do. You do this like really boring, like overly smooth, like painting. That's what we do now. We do romantic stuff because that's the trend. And these guys were like, screw it. No, we're going to like do plein air painting and like get the gesture of life and stuff, and created a movement and created an art scene. It's like, that's kind of the nature of art. So I feel like I am down for any sort of rebellion. I will join in, as long as it's not like physical, because I still need to get my workout habits better. Scott, what's your thoughts on this and stuff? I mean, I know like personally, like you've had kind of the algorithm kind of work against you, and yet you're still funding your Kickstarter. I think you've doubled your goal, you know?
Well, I mean, I think I've talked about that a number of times, so people are probably sick of it. But I just kind of, to me, what you guys are talking about, it seems like it's all cyclical, but it really is, as creatives, I think we have the power, because everything you're talking about, I compare it to like gentrification, where you'll have this old, you know, area that nobody wants to live in. A few bohemian people, some artists actually go in there. They start to, you know, and then, you know, they start to do some cool stuff, and then people take notice and like, oh, yeah, this is cool. Let's go hang out with these guys. Let's go move in. And then it just becomes so cool. And then these corporate people come in and just, you know, adopt the whole thing and change it. And the prices go way up and it becomes lame. And then the artists have to start again. And that's kind of what it is. That's kind of how all this stuff works. I mean, it just, we as creatives create cool stuff, whether it's a comic convention, the first comic conventions, and then the corporate people come in and you know, ruin it. And you know, you got to find something else. You got to find something new. But as creatives, that's what we have to do. So, I mean, but it's all the same.
I love that though, because I do, that's a great analogy, because I do, like, having lived in Long Beach and seen like the gentrification of that city, and a lot of the great stuff about it just got like overrun by yuppies. And I was like, the worst thing. And it's like that. And then suddenly you see like the thing you loved becomes like a franchise, you know? So, yeah, like I'm all for it. Let's defranchise this business and like start our own awesome taco joint.
Yeah. So, so lots of people in the chats really like this idea, which I didn't come up with. I don't know who originally said that. I think Squatchy and others were kind of involved in that. But there used to be these things called Instapods, and they kind of don't work anymore. Yeah, I think we should definitely crowdsource this. Here's the thing. YouTube is one of the problems, right? YouTube also like kind of holds people back. It's not as bad as others, but I mean they have been testing kind of the, you know, like kind of the algorithmic timeline inside of your subscription channel, which becomes a really problematic issue. And so like email is kind of the last bastion of stuff. So what I would like to do is I would like to say get on my email newsletter, which I don't think I've sent one out in like 8 months or something, because I want to just like get an email invite out to everybody who's interested in doing this. And so you can go to corykerr.com/email and do that. And then also, Scott, if you're down in throwing one out to your email newsletter, yeah, so get on Scott's as well. And is there a specific domain that they go to, or just circworks.com?
If you go to my website, you might have to, right now there's a big giant ad for the Kickstarter, but if you scroll down a little bit, it'll say get the Comic Maker Starter Kit. That'll take you to you'll get that, plus you'll be enrolled in the email list for that.
Okay, so get on those two email lists, and before I leave for Creative South, I'm gonna have a solution so that we can all get in and start figuring this thing out. It won't be completely built, but at least we'll get something started. And then just tell everybody who's like-minded to jump in. And we're looking for two types of people. We're looking for people who want to create and connect, and people who like good stuff and are kind of sick of the algorithm. We'll figure out ways to kind of filter and whatnot so that you're not getting bombarded. But anyway, long story short, we're doing this thing.
Yeah. So, hey, how long is the drive from Atlanta to Columbus?
It's a little less than 2 hours.
Okay, we got to talk about this on the way, because this kind of come up with some ideas for this stuff.
Yeah, so we'll Scott and I are going to figure this out because we're both going to the same conference. But yeah, it'll be good. I'm excited about it. The main thing that I'm super excited about is that this isn't like any of the three of us saying, hey, everybody's going to do this, but like the community came up with it. Like I was just sitting here ranting about crap that I hate.
Playing this thing.
Yeah, and so yeah, I'm willing to facilitate.
What the topic was going to be when we started.
No, this wasn't even what we were going to talk about. I was just still mad about it. So
yeah, I like the idea of kind of like let's actually take some action. Because that's you know, as we talked about before, it's like that's the best route of a complaint, is like directly to action.
Yeah.
Because that's going to be what causes change. So, I mean, hell, we can at least chip away at it and like try to kind of break through that annoying wall.
And I mean, if nothing else happens other than this is an unfiltered way to connect with each other in a way that makes it so that if one of us puts something out and people want to see that thing, that they get to without the algorithms getting in the way. I don't care if we change the world. I want to see people's stuff that I want to see, and I want people to see my stuff that want to see it. That's all I really care about. The rest of it is probably great, and I'm sure that there's stuff like this that is happening all over the place, because it's usually not just one thing that happens. There's going to be a groundswell movement that rips the gates off the gatekeepers, little walls or whatever. But this stuff like this is definitely going to be part of it.
Cool.
So
we'll their own little collective.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Dude, we've been going a while.
Yeah. It's an hour and 15 minutes. So.
All right. So do we want to kind of wrap this up? I mean, I think that's a really positive note to kind of end it on. And I don't know. I'm excited about your guys' trip. Actually, I think it's going to be pretty cool.
Yeah. That's going to be pretty rad. So I forgot to put Scott's up here, but if you want to go to serkworks.com, SERK, and then works.com. Check out the Kickstarter. That's the first thing that you should do, because that is happening right now, and time is ticking, and other phrases that will get you to understand the sense of urgency of a closing gate. And then sign up for the newsletter. I will put a link immediately after that on corykerr.com/48hr, so that you guys can kind of see what's going on there. So go to corykerr.com/48hr. And then, as always, check out Joshua Kemble's stuff at quarterlystories.com. And if you would like to help him with the algorithm that he's fighting, then you can go on tapas.io and subscribe to that. Victor Rodriguez is saying we want videos of the event, and there will be videos.
Yeah, we'll have to put out one, because one thing I noticed on Creative South, like if you Google it, there's some videos, but there's not much, and they don't have a lot of views. I think we could put out probably the best Creative South video. That, as cool as I hear about this conference, they're, as far as them updating on their website and just getting people in that don't know what it's about, I think we could do a really good job with that. So we'll have to put something together. Yeah,
absolutely. And I mean, I'm planning on. I do a ton of this on my iPad, so I'm completely mobile. I can produce all kinds of different stuff. So
we can teach you.
Yeah, I will. And there's some good stuff, and it's pretty inexpensive. So so go back, Scott. Get on those email newsletters. And one is going to be at corykerr.com/48hr, and the other is going to be at serkworks.com. And we will. The revolution is coming. So we've got lots of people volunteering to help, and I will definitely take you up on that after I figure out what it is that is happening and what we need. So you guys are awesome. This made my day. I am no longer angry. I am now enthused. What were you saying, Josh?
Fight the power of evil revolution.
Yeah, exactly. All right. And, have T-shirts of Che Guevara and stuff. Okay. We'll catch you guys in a couple days. We're out.